Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So now guys, this is the second installment of a segment that we introduced last week. It is like a sort of a Sunday glossary. So in this segment, I curate about 5 videos from the channel that you may have missed, 5 videos that I find interesting that you may have missed on the channel. So I curate them into like a Sunday magazine that you can just listen to as you're having your coffee or preparing yourself for church or whatever it is that you're intending to do, or even if you're just relaxing. So without further ado, we kick off. The first video that you may have missed that I'm bringing to your attention is from Bobrisky. His grandmother is apparently asking him to bring his husband home, and here is the story. Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So now guys, we go to show business this time around, just to switch it up a bit. Bobrisky, of course, no one else. Guys, I bring you this. My grandma is disturbing me to bring my husband home. A headline attributed to Bobrisky. Now, I say a headline, but it's actually a tweet that he put out. So it's just a short little tweet that I'm going to be reading out to you. But that tweet is headlined with the moniker, "My grandma is disturbing me to bring my husband home," a headline attributed to Bobrisky. So now let's now see what good old Bob has to say. So it goes under the hashtag on Twitter, Bobrisky222. So that's his handle, Bobrisky222, and this is what he has to say. And this is what he has to say. "My grandma was joking with me this evening. She said, 'Bob, when are you bringing your husband home?' I replied her by saying, 'Granny, I need a billionaire, not just an Instagram broke boy. I am effing rich now. I need an effing rich man too. I know some billionaires are following me with fake accounts. One day, one will DM me one day." So this is now Bobrisky now. He used to be male, by the way. Let's just be clear on the backstory of this person. I am saying person, of course, because I don't really know what the right adjective would be to qualify this person, and I don't want to be accused of any sort of phobia, but he did used to be male, and to all intents and purposes he still is male, but by all presentation he is not, to the point now that his grandma, according to him, is asking him to bring home his husband. So this is now what Yoruba land has turned into, because this guy or girl, however you choose to view this person, is to all intents and purposes a Yoruba man. I can say that without any fear of contradiction, because he was of course born originally a Yoruba man, but now of course now is a grandmother. Can you imagine a Yoruba grandmother saying to her grandson, "When are you going to bring home your husband?" So now this is now the narrative now that is the contemporary Yoruba storyline, courtesy of Bobrisky. So that is Bobrisky. So we go on then to Tonto DK, never short on controversy, and let's see now what she has to say. Tonto DK announces she will be giving away 5 million naira to fans on her birthday. So now a birthday celebration from this lady that is always on the media claiming that she's broke and the husband is not paying child support, etc. But alas, she's not too broke to have 5 million to spare. Again, the headline, Tonto DK announces she will be giving away 5 million naira to fans on her birthday. So now let's now see how she explains this. Nollywood actress Tonto DK has made a big announcement towards the celebration of her birthday, which is in 9 days' time. The actress, who is anticipating for the big day, announced that she will be giving out a cumulative sum of 5 million naira to her fans on the 9th of June when she finally turns 35. Now, just to pause there for a moment, I'm surprised that Tonto Dike is 35. I'm not sure if that is a show business age or not, because of course you know that show business age is usually different from actual age. But to my own mindset, I've always been of the thought that she was a person in her early 40s. But of course now she said she's 35, and we have to go by that because she's educated enough to know when she was born. So we carry on. Tonto Dike prepared the minds of her fans towards the birthday giveaway in a recent post that she made on her verified Instagram page. She said the giveaway is only for her YouTube followers. She wrote in the caption of her post, "So my birthday is in 9 days time. You all," that is Y and then all, so that is you all thought I forgot about the biggest online giveaway in history. This year we are giving out 5 million naira, 3 million in cash and 2 million in luxury gifts for a few of my YouTube followers. Stay tuned. King Tonto Luxury birthday giveaway, YouTube followers only. So she's gone now on Instagram to announce that she's doing this giveaway to her YouTube fans. But as I said, this is a lady that spent a good chunk of 2-3 years pleading poverty online, and now she has arrived at the position where she's able to give away 5 million naira. So sudden wealth or whatever, but that is Tonto Dike for you. So now the next person we're going on to is Tiwa Savage. Now there are two stories that I can do on Tiwa Savage, but I've chosen to do this one. I may have to go NAKED in my next musical video. Tiwa Savage reveals. So that is Tiwa Savage now making promises, especially to our male fans who will of course be looking forward to this. Now I have to, just for full disclosure, I have to say that I am not really fully aware of the works of this Tiwa Savage person. I've never heard her music. I've not seen her in a movie. I know the name Tiwa Savage, of course, because it recurs within the Nigerian decimal. But to say I know her body of work, that would be me telling a lie. So I'm just going off name recognition to bring you this story. So the headline again: I may have to go NAKED in my next musical video. Tiwa Savage reveals. So now let's now see how Tiwa is planning to keep this promise to her fans. Tiwa Savage, a Nigerian singer cum songwriter, has teased that she might have to go NAKED in her next musical video shoot in order to beat the accolades her last project received. The 40-year-old vocalist, who recently put out 44 to 99, a song which was accompanied by detailed visuals, was speaking to BBC on what to expect from her forthcoming album entitled Celia. So Celia is the name of the album, and the promise, of course, is as has been said. So now here is our words on the BBC. I might just have to go BUTT NAKED in my next video because I don't know what else I am going to have to do to top that one. And that ends with an exclamation mark. Tiwa Savage said. And just to put it out there, this was done in Nigeria. All the cast is Nigerian. The director, the AP, everybody is Nigerian. I love the fact that I could present this to the label and say this was done in Africa by Africans. This is what we can do. Imagine when you invest in us even more, you will get amazing work. Speaking on what fans are to look forward to as the C-19 pandemic continues to discourage showbiz releases, Tiwa said she might end up shooting her next video at home using her iPhone. We are going through this pandemic, so the idea was I want to let them know that I am still a boss, that I am still beautiful, that I am still African, she explained. People have been really creative with it, which is amazing. The album is a whole mix of emotions an African woman goes through: love, aspiration, being bossy, being sexy, being vulnerable. All of that is what I think the modern African woman is, and that is what I want to portray. It has really touched my heart to see that people are having a hard time during this pandemic. I mean, we are blessed to be at home. We have light. We can pile up food for months if we want. So she's speaking to her domestic circumstances with that one. But there are some people who can't. People who only have money for today or food for today. So this pandemic has really opened my heart to the real situation of where the world is right now. Last year, Tiwa Savage left Don Jazzy's Marvin Records and joined Universal Music Group, a US music company that boasts of artists like Rihanna, Taylor Swift, and Lady Gaga. So now, in the company of high-achieving, lofty showbiz names, Tiwa Savage finds herself. But of course, she's now making this promise, which I am sure her male fans are especially looking forward to, because why not? Really, a young beautiful woman is always an allure to a male person. So of course, I mean, depending on your sexuality, we have to add that in these times, but of course, in generality, always an allure to a male audience. So there you have it. Bobrisky, Tonto DK, and Tiwa Savage. This is now the breakthrough. Now, it's not really a breakthrough because I have done show business related videos before in the past, but then of course I just felt the need now to break that endless political diet that we feed on this channel, just to introduce some levity to the proceedings. So come share thoughts. Tonto DK, Bobrisky, and Tiwa Savage, what do you make of this trilogy? Tonto DK and Bobrisky, of course, are well-known friends. They are buddies. Of course, they are not dating because really one is female, Tonto DK, and the other one, Bobrisky, is indeterminate. So of course then a placid relationship. But whatever your thoughts are, come share them with me in the comment section. But before you do that, click on the red subscribe button so it turns gray. Bell button notifies you every time I drop a new video. Then come share thoughts about all this going on within the Nigerian show business scene with me in the comment section. So I'll leave you here. Carry this conversation on with you in the comment section. But here I say peace. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. So now the next video we're going to is a fight that is going on between Asari Dokubo and Nnamdi Kanu about who's collecting money from whom. It is a very complex story, but here it is. Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So now guys, this is not the first time that we're hearing this sort of thing about this guy, and this is not the first person to make this sort of allegations and throw it in his direction. Nnamdi Kanu we're talking about, as guys I bring you this. Asari Dokubo to Nnamdi Kanu, swear if you have not been collecting money from governors. So allegations of collecting money being pointed in the direction of Nnamdi Kanu again. This is not, of course, the first time that this sort of allegations has been leveled against him. I'm sure you've all heard accounts of this severally, and here it is again. This is not to make true or false of it, but the allegation is being put by yet another person. The headline again, Asari Dokubo to Nnamdi Kanu, swear if you have not been collecting money from governors. So now let's now see what proof he has of this. Mujahid Asari Dokubo, leader of the Niger Delta People's Volunteer Force, has taken the challenge thrown at him by Nnamdi Kanu of the indigenous people of Biafra. In a tit-for-tat, he has also thrown the challenge back at Nnamdi Kanu. On Sunday, the 31st May, Nnamdi Kanu accused Dokubo of collecting 20 million naira from him in 2016. The money, he said, belonged to IPOB. He then challenged him to swear on the Quran to deny the allegation. Asari Dokubo, if you claim that I didn't give you money and I didn't send people to discuss with you, make a video and swear with your Quran, swear with your religion, and die. You are an idiot. You are a thief. Over-bloated swamp pig, Nnamdi Kanu said. So Nnamdi Kanu does like to go to that sort of language. This is something that frequently recurs. There's a lot of anger in Nnamdi Kanu. There's no denying that. I think we can all agree on that. But now Dokubo replies. Dokubo has replied to him in a video. He also asked Nnamdi Kanu to swear on the Bible or the Torah, since Kanu says he is a Jew, if he has not been collecting monies from southeastern governors. Dokubo claimed Kanu's payoff runs into hundreds of millions and that he collects monies even beyond the region. He further made a claim that will shock rabid IPOB members. Dokubo alleged that Kanu had been betraying the IPOB members to the DSS, the secret police. So actually, there's a clip of Dokubo making that allegation, and I shall insert that. Actually, let me insert that clip here now.
Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Nnamdi Kanu, your followers had challenged me that if I did not collect 20 million from you, I should swear by the Quran. This is a copy of the Quran. And I swore by the Quran so that you can read. It's not in Arabic, it's in English. You can read. I swore by the Quran that I never collected 20 million from you or from any of your representatives. That I never betrayed any of your members. You sent your members to me. They stayed with me and they left. As I'm talking to you, as I'm making this video, I have about 18 IPOB members with me, active IPOB members, living in my house, living with me. That is the love they have for me and the trust they have for me. Combatant IPOB members who live with me, who go and come. So many IPOB commanders, BSS commanders go and come back to see me. They call me, they talk to me. Sometimes they beg me not to talk. I swore that if I collected any money and betrayed any Biafran, may God punish me, may Allah punish me in this world and in the year after. I also now ask you to swear. If you have not been collecting monies from all the governors of the Igbo states and beyond, running into hundreds of millions, that you have never collected a dime from them, you should swear. That you've never betrayed IPOB members to the DSS, you should swear. I know whether you swore or not, your days are numbered. You will soon be punished, and the whole world will see your disgrace.
So there you saw it. That's Dokubo making the allegations. So we carry on. Dokubo, 56, was born Melford Dokubo Goodhead Jr. His father was a high court judge. So I thought this guy was a Muslim, but apparently not. So I'm not quite sure where he got that Muhajid or whatever it is that we read earlier on, but a confused man. So now we have to set that then against the background of any and every allegation that he's now making. His activism made him abandon a law degree program at the University of Calabar. So obviously a dropout as well. He later converted to Islam. So yes, that explains that. First of all, he co-founded the Ijaw Youth Council, which gave all companies an ultimatum to leave Ijaw land. He became leader of the group in 2001. 3 years after, he founded the militant group, the Niger Delta People's Volunteer Force, NDPVF. The Niger Delta People's Volunteer Force (NDPVF) became a major catalyst for unrest in the Niger Delta region. Through the group, Asari made a lot of money as he bagged a $10 million contract to keep watch on the oil pipelines. He is now resident in Cotonou, Benin Republic. So there you have it now. I'm not quite sure that we would give a lot of weight to anything that this character is saying, this Dokubo character has to say. I'm just reading through his CV now as they have described him, the son of a High Court judge who dropped out of uni to become a militant and switched religions, and ended up in Benin Republic with a $10 million swag bag. So this is the summary of his life. So whatever he has to say then has to be set against the background of that. But setting it against the background of that is one thing, but that recurring decimal of people alleging that Nnamdi Kanu collects monies from politicians is not something that is going to go away in a hurry, because this is an allegation that recurs, and these allegations will recur given the sort of profile and activism that Nnamdi Kanu has. So we have to give that consideration as well. So they will try to muddy his name and destroy his name by whatever means that they can, and the means that they usually go to in Nigeria is that he has taken money, it is bribery and corruption. So we have to put that in the mix, but we also have to put into the mix the possibility that this might be true, because there is a distinct possibility that this might be true, because there's a school of thought that the Nnamdi Kanu activism is essentially a money-making vehicle that has now gone awry, because now it's now had consequences to the point that it has now evolved into something else. But a lot of people are of the thought that the original underpinning of the Nnamdi Kanu activism is money-led. So there's that school of thought there. I'm not saying that is my belief system, but I am saying that a lot of people are of that view, and you are aware of that as well, whoever it is that is listening to or watching this video. I am not saying anything that's come as news to you, and you are not hearing it from me first. If you follow Nnamdi Kanu, then you would have heard countless allegations of monies and corruption and taking monies, especially from politicians. This is not the first time that people are saying this, but I am suggesting that we might afford ourselves the luxury of discounting this Asari Dokubo character, because one, Nnamdi Kanu claimed that he gave him money. Then this guy has come out to make this counter argument, and I think he has just picked this argument off the shelf because he has heard a lot of people say it about Nnamdi Kanu. So he's now just adding his own voice to that as a counter argument to the allegations that Nnamdi Kanu leveled against him. So tit for tat was how it was described in the article, and tit for tat is what it looks like after having read through it. Conversations in the comment section, the recurring allegations of Nnamdi Kanu collecting monies from politicians. This is really what we're looking to discuss. Inside or outside of this Asari Dokubo is still something that lingers. What says you? Come share thoughts. But before you do that, click on the red subscribe button so it turns gray. Bell button notifies you every time I drop a new video. Then come tell me if you're of the thought that Nnamdi Kanu indeed does collect monies from politicians in the comment section. So I'll leave you here. Carry this conversation on within the comment section. But here I say peace. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. Next, we're going to a fight that is going on between Rufai and Tinubu. So this is something that has been simmering for quite a while now, and every so often Rufai will throw a missive in the direction of Tinubu. He did it again, and here it is. Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So now guys, the simmering battle between El Rufai and Tinubu is slowly coming to the boil and is likely to come to its peak by 2022. El Rufai and Tinubu of course are the front runners for the 2023 presidency. The difficulty for El Rufai is the understanding within the Nigerian space is that that presidency should come to the southern region, and the Nigerian mindset, the Nigerian diet would not really feed on another round of another Malami in 2023. So we're completely fully fed up now with this Buhari experience that we're going through, and we are not going to really suffer another Malami. So this is the difficulty that El Rufai has, but that has not really stopped him from still aspiring to that position and making movements towards it. So with that guys, I bring you this. Tinubu is not my man, says El Rufai as he congratulates Aregbesola at 63. So this is now open warfare really, or at least another missive thrown in the direction of Tinubu by El Rufai. So the headline again, Tinubu isn't my man, says El Rufai as he congratulates Aregbesola at 63. So now let's now see now what mini explosive the little man from Kaduna State is throwing in the direction of the juggernaut from Lagos State. In a fresh twist to the silent row between the Kaduna State Governor, Malam Nasir El Rufai, and the national leader of the All Progressive Congress, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, the Kaduna State Governor has said Tinubu is not his man. Speaking at a webinar in commemoration of the 63rd birthday of Minister of Interior and former Governor of Osun State, Mr. Rauf Aregbesola, on Saturday, El Rufai noted that Aregbesola remained his man any day, but that Tinubu is not his man. This, he said, was due to the differences between him and the former Lagos State Governor. The webinar was tagged Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola Colloquium 2020 with the theme Government Unusual, Innovative Economic Solutions to Unlock Mass Prosperity, and was moderated by Boasan Omofeye. El Rufai's statement came as a subtle confirmation of the disagreement between him and Tinubu. Both men are stalwarts of the ruling party and are rumored to have ambitions to contest for the presidency in 2023. Tinubu has never made any public statement about their seemingly frosty relationship, and El Rufai had also been conservative on the issue, except for a very few occasions. Already there had been mounting tensions over which of the 6 zones would produce the next president in the 2023 election. Also in February, the governor of Yobe State, Mai Mala Buni, whilst responding to fears that the APC might collapse when the president, Major General Muhammadu Buhari, retired, leaves office in 2023, said the much speculated presidential ambitions of El Rufai and Tinubu could not break the APC, stating that it would rather strengthen the party. While neither of them had declared an intention to contest the election, the Yobe governor said, "I don't think their ambitions would affect the party. You should know that for now, there is no party in Nigeria that is as formidable as the APC. The APC also controls more states than the other political parties." At an event organized by the Bridge Club tagged An Evening with His Excellency Malam El Rufai, Governor of Kaduna State, in May 2016, the Governor of Kaduna State was believed to be referring to Tinubu when he explained how to end godfatherism in Lagos. Tinubu is widely known to be the godfather of Lagos politics since he left office as governor in 2007. During the question and answer session, a senior advocate of Nigeria and 3-time commissioner of Lagos State, Dr. Muiz Banire asked El Rufai how godfatherism could be dealt with, given how it had served as one of the drawbacks for professionals and businessmen who might want to go into politics. Responding, El Rufai said he defeated and retired 4 political godfathers in Kaduna State, saying the feat could be replicated anywhere, including Lagos State. He stated that the key was to go back to the people directly, noting, however, that it was a step that required time and hard work. The key is to go to the people, he added. Whilst eulogizing Aregbesola during the webinar, El Rufai said he was not ashamed to state that he copied the school feeding initiative in his state from Osun State when he visited Aregbesola as governor, adding that there was a lot governors could learn from the way he developed the state in spite of the economic crisis that plunged the state into debt. Whilst congratulating the birthday celebrant, El Rufai said, "I want to congratulate my brother Ogbeni." Aregbesola, of course, calls himself Ogbeni, which is Mr. in Yoruba. "I want to congratulate my brother Ogbeni on his birthday. You know I am your man any day. I am not Ashiwaju's man and you are Ashiwaju's man, but I am your man any day. Ashiwaju and I have differences, but you and I have no differences." In his remark, Aregbesola, who was visibly overjoyed by the contributions of the panelists and the eulogies he received from them, noted that his achievements as governor were driven by his passion for the people, a virtue, he said, he imbibed from his teenage years. He, however, appreciated the President, Major General Muhammadu Buhari, retired, for encouraging him all along, adding that the second person who has played a very huge role in making me a good public administrator is Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. He takes all the glory. Other panelists at the webinar were the Governor of Kebbi State, Atiku Bagudu, Statistician General, Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, Dr. Yemi Kale, the CEO, Financial Derivatives, Mr. Bismarck Riwani, the Chairman, Citibank, Yemi Kodoso, the CEO, and then it just goes through a list of the people that attended the party. So now let me see if there's anything else here to add. Let me see. So there's not really much more to add from this article. I really just wanted to land on that point where Malam El Rufai effectively declared that he is in open warfare with Tinubu. That is more or less what he has said at the Aregbesola celebration at his birthday party. So now, why would he now declare publicly that he's in open warfare with Tinubu? Malam El Rufai is a Hausa Fulani man from the north. Tinubu is a Yoruba man. We don't know which state he's from. We know he's not from Lagos State, but at least he's a Yoruba man. So he's a northerner, he's a southerner, and then of course almost like effectively from different countries really. So what then ties them? What would lead to their battle? What space are they contending for? Well, the space that they are contending for, of course, is an open secret. It's for the presidency. The contention is for who carries that ticket, who gets that ticket of the APC, for the APC for 2023, because whoever gets that ticket is effectively going to be the next president of Nigeria. There's absolutely no question about that. We all saw how they ran the 2019 election, where they just pretty much just wrote out figures and announced winners, completely ignoring what the people have to say, completely ignoring the will of the people. So we saw that in 2023. So we already know that whoever wins that APC ticket is going to be the next president of Nigeria. So El Rufai has two disadvantages. The first disadvantage is that the whole of the country, especially the whole of the southern region, is waiting in expectation for that power to transfer back to the southern region, because that is the unspoken understanding of the Nigerian nation, that power transits from north to south after one part serves a term or serves a tenure, or maybe that could be 2 terms. So that is the unspoken understanding, and especially having now experienced this Buhari element that we're going through at the moment, the Southerners are now more fervent than ever to have that power back. So anything now that now tells them in 2023 that that power is not going to transit back to them is going to be an almost impossible pill to swallow, and that might then be that trigger then that explodes or implodes the country, because that will be that step too far. So that's the one thing. The other thing is that Tinubu has been building up to this moment since 1999. He has been putting structures in place. He has been organizing, reorganizing, and maneuvering to take that position of the Nigerian president for himself, to serve a term as the Nigerian president for himself. So he's now that last step to that achievement now, and the build-up has been so long and has been that detailed about that I am not going to say it is impossible for Malam Rufai to overtake him, but it will be extremely difficult. You have to understand that. So the battle lines are drawn though, and El Rufai is not toning down his ambitions in that direction. He wants it, but then he knows that there are a lot of hurdles to scale, and those hurdles to scale is especially the Yoruba people. So you'll see him romancing the Yorubas a lot. You'll see him even making comments in Yoruba language. You'll see him appointing Yoruba people into his government, and you see him doing all these things, and all of these things of course are geared towards that 2023 narrative. So he is now building his structures now very quickly and very aggressively to rival Tinubu, and at every opportunity that he has, he will poke and prod at Tinubu, inviting him out to a public fight. But then of course Tinubu is too long in the tooth to be pulled out in that way, because it will be at a complete disadvantage. Tinubu doesn't have to say anything to El Rufai for him to go on and capture the Nigerian state in 2023, because everything is there. Malam Buhari owes him big time. So Malam Buhari cannot be with any sense of conscience betraying Tinubu. Yes, it's a Malami and they are known for their treachery, but even he will balk at the idea, after all that Tinubu has done for him, to now betray Tinubu. So that'll be difficult, and also a lot of people will recoil at that, because everybody knows that it was Tinubu that almost single-handedly made Buhari president. So Tinubu doesn't have to come out, and in terms of wit and sharpness, Tinubu is a very intelligent man, and El Rufai is extremely intelligent man too. But El Rufai might well be more intelligent than Tinubu, but that's by the by, that's subjective. And also there are different types of intelligence. So Tinubu's sort of intelligence is different from El Rufai's sort of intelligence. So this is really what El Rufai is inviting Tinubu out into the public space to contend with him. But if Tinubu steps out, is in for a beating. Malam El Rufai is a very sharp man, as we have already established, but Tinubu is a very cunning man. But Malam El Rufai is very articulate. He has a fantastic grasp of language, is eloquent, is confident, and is an assertive public speaker. Tinubu, he talks with some sort of like slurring, druggy voice that you don't really understand. I wouldn't say he's more inarticulate than Malam Buhari, but it's almost at that Malam Buhari's level, this Tinubu speech pattern. So this is not a man that can really stand in public and speak for any length of time. He says he went to Chicago to study, but you don't really hear it in the way he presents himself. So open warfare though is what is being declared now by Malam El Rufai and is pointing it directly in the direction of Tinubu. But will Tinubu take the bait is what the question is now. This is really where the intrigue is and the interest is. But the battle for 2023 is now in full swing and in full pelt. Conversations in the comment section, the Malam and the Yoruba man, daggers drawn. Who do you think will emerge at the top? Come tell me. But before you do that, click on the red subscribe button so it turns gray. Bell button notifies you every time I drop a new video. Then come tell me what you're making of this tit for tat that is going on between El Rufai and Tinubu in the comment section. So I'll leave you here. Carry this conversation on with you in the comment section. But here I say peace. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. So in this next video, we're going to the north and we're going to visit Professor Ango Abdullahi. So in this video, Professor Ango Abdullahi is insisting that Obasanjo was a far better president than Buhari, and these are his reasons why. Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So now guys, you can replace the name Obasanjo with a monkey and this headline would still hold true. Guys, I bring you this: Obasanjo far better president than Buhari, and this is a headline attributed to an Ango Abdullahi. So as I said, you can replace the name Obasanjo with a monkey and say a monkey is a far better president than Buhari, and that will still hold true. But again, the headline, Obasanjo far better president than Buhari, a comment attributed to an Ango Abdullahi. So now let's now see why exactly he's saying this. A former minister and vice chancellor of the Ahmadu Bello University Abu Zaria, Professor Ango Abdullahi, has said that Olusegun Obasanjo is a far better president than Muhammadu Buhari. Abdullahi, who is the current chairman of the Northern Elders Forum, NEF, also pointed out that President Buhari delegates powers to other people who probably have no qualification or competence to execute the duties of their office. The NEF chairman noted that the Obasanjo presidency was able to make decisions and took responsibilities, qualities, according to him, the Buhari administration lacked. I would say that he, that is Buhari, delegates powers to other people who probably have no qualification and competence to execute the duties of their office. They may also have no mandate to execute those powers delegated to them. He was quoted as saying, "The presidential powers that are enshrined in the Constitution are entailing responsibilities of a person who offered himself for election, as Buhari did. Eventually, he emerged as the president, and therefore, those powers are exclusively his own powers. All he needs to do is to ensure that those powers are executed in the expectation of the people of the country." According to him, it is true that Buhari cannot do everything all alone, but there are responsibilities and functions that are totally his. He said, unfortunately, the president had failed to gather the necessary materials with which to carry out the duties and functions of the president, and had also put together poor quality of people, either as ministers or other positions. I have worked with only one of the presidents. I worked with Obasanjo for 3 years. Of course, Obasanjo was a far better president. I ranked Obasanjo far better president than Buhari. This is because of his ability to take on the duties of the president, whether sometimes right or wrong. The critical job of the president is to take decisions. Some of the decisions may be right, whilst others may be wrong. The most important thing is that there must be somebody who takes decisions and takes responsibility. This is where Obasanjo excelled. He took decisions and took responsibility. This is the major difference between Buhari's presidency and Obasanjo's presidency, he said. So this is now a northerner now. But then, of course, you have to add the caveat that this guy actually served under Obasanjo. But then, of course, this is the chairperson of the Northern Elders Forum, a pro-Northern organization that is entirely led by a northern agenda. So this is steeped in the wool, staunch northerner who is now backing a southerner over his fellow northerner. So I continue to ask who exactly Malam Buhari's constituency is, who are his backers. His backers, of course, the armies with the gun, because of course Malam Buhari is a notorious coup plotter. So now this Ango Abdullahi now has come out again to say, look, I am distancing myself from this guy because his incompetence is to the level that we in the north cannot stomach. So his incompetence is to the level that the northerners cannot stomach. His incompetence is to the level that the southerners cannot stomach, and yet he's still there, hiding away in Aso Rock, drinking akamu and counting his dollars. Conversations in the comment section, Obasanjo was a far better president than Malam Buhari. This is what the Northerners are saying. What says you? And by the way, this is something I've said copiously on my channel as well. Anytime I do a comparative analysis of Malam Buhari in relation to other presidents. So other presidents, Goodluck Jonathan, Yadwa, etc., Obasanjo, of course, they are by a million mile better than Buhari, because Buhari, of course, is a absolute categorical disaster. Come share thoughts, but before you do that, click on the red subscribe button so it turns gray. Bell button notifies you every time I drop a new video. Then come tell me what you're making of what this Malami has said in the comment section. So I'll leave you here. Carry this conversation on with you in the comment section. But here I say peace. Okay, so hope you enjoyed that. So now in this last video, we're going to Professor Wole Soyinka. So now in this video, Wole Soyinka chimes in into a skirmish that is going on between a chap called Colonel Umar and Malam Buhari. Colonel Umar is of the opinion that the nepotism of the Buhari regime is excessive and portends danger for the Nigerian state. Wole Soyinka agrees and he explains in this video. Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. So now guys, he would have liked to have retired a long time ago, but the state that the Nigerian nation is in is not enabling him to do this. Professor Wole Soyinka, of course, guys, I bring you this. President Buhari not in charge of Aso Rock, says Professor Soyinka. So he has felt the need to weigh in again on matters Nigerian. So again, the headline, President Buhari not in charge of Aso Rock, says Professor Soyinka. So now let's now see how the prof is describing this. Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka says he does not believe that President Muhammadu Buhari is in charge of Nigeria. Soyinka made the comment on Thursday, June the 4th, in an interview with Plus TV Africa. His comment was in reaction to an open letter written to President Buhari by Colonel Umar Dangiwa, retired, a former military administrator of Kaduna State. Dangiwa had accused the president of nepotism, especially as regards to his appointment. Professor Soyinka is insistent that President Buhari is not in charge of the country. Asked what his thoughts were on the open letter, Soyinka said, well, my first reaction was thank goodness people like Umar who have a tendency to hit the nail hard and go to the point factually without self-interest. It struck me when I saw this and I was appalled. But I said to myself, Why should I be surprised that such an atrocity has been going on? I think those who are responsible for this criminal lopsidedness should be punished. It is not sufficient just to discuss it. It is criminal. I have said this before. I don't believe there is really anybody in charge in Aso Rock. I am sorry to say this. I have been studying the trend over the past year and a half, and I believe this president is not in charge of this nation. And I believe this president is not in charge of this nation in so many aspects and directions. I am convinced he's not really and totally with it. So he is not really and totally with it, of course, is dementia that is talking about. You know that everybody's of the thought that the middle stages of senility is fully vested now within the body being, because of course is an elderly old man, 80-something-year-old man who has a very severe illness, so he shouldn't really be in charge of Nigeria. But this is where we find ourselves, and this is what Professor Wole Soyinka is speaking to. He continues, "It is so serious. It is not the fact alone. We know the history of this. We know what it has cost the nation, and we know it isn't over yet. And you say you are launching an inquiry. That's not enough. This man is not in charge." Soyinka also decried the silence of the presidency on the issues that Giwa raised, adding that it creates a sense of impunity. So impunity, of course, is not even a sense of impunity anymore that we're talking about in Nigeria. Impunity is as a matter of right, because there are a clique of people who are above the law and they do as they will, and if you try to challenge them, that might well be the last thing you do on this planet. We all know them virtually by names, the usual suspects, the cabal and the clique and the gang. They are mostly northerners and they are above the law, to the point that even to speak up, you read constantly of journalists being jailed for criticizing the president. I'm not going to mention Sowore this time around. We already know that case, but it's not just the only one. Sowore is just the poster boy for that particular repression that is going on within the Nigerian state. So what Wole Soyinka is now saying is an open secret really within the Nigerian state, because nobody of any IQ level of above up to 2 digits, nobody with a 2-digit IQ level is of the thought that Malam Buhari is in charge of Nigeria. How can he be, with his state of health, both mentally and physically? Of course, he's not in charge of Nigeria. The people in charge of Nigeria, the person in charge of Nigeria actually was Abakari, but you know he's now deceased. So now it's free for all now. I think Boss Mustafa is now trying to take that slot now. Of course, Yemi Oshibanjo has completely been, it's just been washed aside, it's just brushed off. So now it's a free for all, really. It's just like a scramble to grab as much as they can in the build up to 2023, in the hope that Buhari can just be maintained up to that point, and then they'll just abandon him and walk away with their bag full of dollars. This is really all that is going on within the Nigerian space, and this is effectively what Wole Soyinka is saying in a coded way. Conversations in the comment section. The prof has come out to speak. Now, what says you? Come share thoughts. Who is in charge of Aso Rock? This is the question. You come give me your names, not your personal names, but the names of the people you feel are in charge. But before you do that, click on the red subscribe button so it turns gray. The bell button notifies you every time I drop a new video. Then come tell me now who you feel captains the ship Nigeria in the comment section. So that if you hear, carry this conversation on with you in the comment section. But here, I say peace. Okay, so hope you enjoyed that. So that was the last video. So now this is something that is going to be repeating, because there was a good feedback when I introduced it last week. So I'm waiting to see your comments on this now second installment now, to see how you are enjoying it or what you think of it. This is really something I'm experimenting with. So if you feel that is a direction that you would like to see the channel follow, then please indicate in the comment section so I can then know that is something that you want to have me present every Sunday. Just to round off, it's not going to be the stories that you have necessarily seen. It's just some of the hidden videos that has not gotten so much traction on the channel, but I feel are interesting enough for a second viewing, so I represent them for your consideration and your enjoyment. So this is really the thinking and the underpinning of it. So let me know what your comments are or your thoughts are in the comment section. So I'll leave you here. Carry on with you in the comment section, but here I say peace.